The ongoing theory online, it's all over Reddit, is that whenever I do a Christie Crime and Wine episode and I don't have wine, I lose. That theory came into play in the last episode and was proven true. So I have stocked up on the wine for this episode. However, the downside is that I can't drink it yet. It is far too early. We're just gonna have to make do with coffee for the intro. Ooh. This is the Halloween special. Oh, actually, that's really hot. I should probably use the handle. This is the Halloween special episode of my Christie Crime and Wine series. Today I'm going to be tackling Hallowe'en Party by the Queen of Crime herself. This was recently just made into a movie called A Haunting in Venice, which I have not seen yet. I do not want to spoil myself for the potential killer at the end because I am trying to solve the whodunit. But as long as I guess the killer before the end of this book, then I get the point, and if not, Agatha gets the point. So this is what the scoreboard looks like right now, and it's pretty much neck and neck. If I get it wrong again in this episode, then me and Agatha will be tied, but I'm hoping that that doesn't happen. I really am hoping for a win in this episode, and I have the wine, so it shouldn't be a problem. I'm doing it a little bit differently to the previous two that I've done because I always do these solve-alongs with my patrons, and usually I do 2 live shows and we read half of it first, and then another half of it before we read it together during a live show to find out who did it. Half the times I miss things and they don't. So I'm changing it up a little bit this time round with my patrons. I have a guest as well. We are having Lexi from Alexandra Roselyn be our guest sleuth for the week. And we're having a Halloween party tomorrow night and we're gonna try and solve it then. But I've structured it so there's only be 1 live show tomorrow and I have to guess the killer before that live show also and not change my mind during that live show, otherwise I won't get the point. So at least that way I won't be getting any ideas from my patrons and it's just 100% my clues, my evidence that I found through reading this book in this video. So before tomorrow's live show I have 246 pages to read. That's the first 24 chapters and then I believe the last 3 chapters are revealing who did it. So let's see if we can get there first. If you do end up enjoying this video, please do give this video a like and subscribe if you haven't already and leave all the comments down below as well. Let me know if you've read this book, if you've been trying to solve it yourself. If you solved it, that's awesome. But yeah, let's now get into the investigation. I think it's time to bring back the murder whiteboard, even though it has so much cat hair on it. If you are following along, this will be filled with spoilers, just fair warning, which is a given because, you know, I'm trying to solve this case. So I need to present all the facts and all of the evidence and clues that will hopefully show us who the killer is. So far, I've no clue. I'm 69 pages into this. I've read the first 7 chapters and we're going to talk about the story and the victim first. So Halloween Party starts off at, you guessed it, a Halloween party. And this children's Halloween party, there are adults there, there are plenty of adults there too, but it's run by Mrs. Rowena Drake. Also at this party is someone called Ariadne Oliver. Ariadne Oliver is a mystery writer. She has written several successful books about murder, and it seems like a lot of the kids there know her, including a 13-year-old girl called Joyce. So after some chats and things, we mainly follow Ariadne as she peruses the house a little bit, and, you know, people are playing Halloween type games. And I honestly do quite like the start of this book and how it's set up with a lot of the Halloween imagery. There are pumpkins, there is apple bobbing, there is talk of murder and things like that. It feels like a genuine Halloween party. In fact, there was even a moment when 2 apples rolled off and stopped as though arrested by a witch's wand at Mrs. Oliver's feet. And just things like that just tie into witches or zombies or things that are associated with Halloween quite a lot. So I like that. But yeah, Ariadne Oliver goes off a little bit, wanders around the house, and then we go to Poirot, who is at home. He gets a phone call from Ariadne Oliver and she needs to come over like stat. She comes over and honestly, this woman can talk. She is in a terrible state and she needs to tell Poirot something, and even while she is sitting there right in front of him, she just won't shut the hell up about everything but what she's there for. You know, she's going through this whole Halloween party stuff and talking about water and it's being wet out and how much she hates water and stuff like that. I'm just like, oh my god. I know that kind of ties into the, well, where the victim's body is found, but like, come on girl, we ain't got time for this. She says things like all sorts of things are being done. There was bombing for apples and cutting 6pence off a tumbler full of flour and looking in a looking glass and blah blah blah. Just get to the point. I want half a mind to accuse Ariadne Oliver of being the killer because she's just pissing me off. Anyway, she finally gets to the point and tells Poirot about a murder. A murder after the snap track and everyone went home. That, you see, was when they couldn't find her. Find whom? A girl. A girl called Joyce. Now, I'm trying to remember which colours on this whiteboard were actually good, because I tried to use this when I went to the library to solve the body in the library, and the markers were terrible. You could barely see them. But we are just going to use this for our victim. We're not going to overcomplicate things. This is very simple investigating by Slagatha. Joyce Reynolds. Not related to Ryan. She is our victim, and she was found at this Halloween party. So firstly, she is, well, they said around about 12 to 13, but I'm pretty sure they settled on 13 as her age. So I'm just going to put 13 years old, which is so young. I feel so bad for her. I think there have been young victims in the past too, from the ones that I've read. But this is, I think, the first one where they've been the main victim. And I'm so sad about that. And she was found drowned in the barrel. I believe they found her with her head still in it, but the rest of her body outside of it. So she wasn't like stuffed in this barrel, but it is the barrel where they are bobbing for apples. So it appears as though someone has held her head under the water and drowned her. Apple. Is it bobbing or bopping? I feel like bopping doesn't sound right. Apple bobbing barrel. I really hope I spelled barrel right, otherwise I'm going to look like a right numpty. And maybe it's just one L. Is it just one L? Barrel? Anyway, yeah, she's our victim. And we know what's really strange about our victim is that before this, and the only time we really meet her when she is alive, is a little bit earlier at the party. They're talking to Ariadne Oliver about her books and how her latest book didn't really have enough bodies in it or blood and stuff. And then that's when Joyce mentions that, oh, I've seen a murder. And everyone's like, wait, you've seen a murder? Why have you never mentioned that before? You're making this up. Like, nobody believes her. And she says, yeah, I saw a murder years ago. And bear in mind, she is still quite young. So, like, how far ago did she say this? She said she didn't say anything beforehand because she didn't realise there was a murder when it happened. So again, like, everyone's like, oh, whatever. But people do want to know a little bit more about it. And my initial instinct was, oh, maybe she is making this up. People are intrigued by it and they do want to know about it. But that's when Joyce is like, you know what, I'm not going to tell you because you're all making fun of me, sort of thing. So she doesn't actually end up explaining anything about this. I'm going to put witness to a murder. And then I'm just going to do a little note about that. As in, didn't realise it was murder at the time. That leads you to think it couldn't have really been a violent murder, otherwise she would have recognised it as murder at the time. So what kind of murder is there that you don't really suspect as murder in the moment? So I had to really think about that, and we're still trying to investigate what that means in the story that I'm so far through. For instance, some examples have been thrown around but nothing concrete. So I do have a little bit of a theory, but I'm gonna mention that when I talk about suspects, I think. Right now, I just want to talk about the victim and what we've learned about her so far. So in the book, when Ariadne Oliver is talking to Poirot, she says, people were playing Snapdragon. I suppose that must be the actual time when it was done. After the Snapdragon, everyone went home. That, you see, was when they couldn't find her. So maybe murdered during game of Snapdragon. So hopefully we will talk to more people and maybe find out who was playing at the time and more things about who was at the party. Unfortunately, there were quite a few people at the party, so it's kind of hard to narrow it down from there. So really right now, I think the most important thing is to find out why she was murdered, which seems to connect to the murder from years before that she apparently witnessed. So another huge question is, did she actually witness a murder or not? Did she make it up? Because a lot of people, even as the suspects that we're talking to, are saying like, oh, she has a wild imagination, she has lied in the past and stuff like that. Is she to be believed with the whole murder thing? I'm in the camp now where I think yes. I think I can believe that she has witnessed a murder, and it's been such a subtle one that she didn't realise at the time, of course. I'm also trying to keep note of who actually was there when Joyce mentioned about saying a murder, because I mean the most obvious theory right now is that someone must have overheard her say this and then realised that, oh, somebody witnessed the murder that I did years before, I'm gonna have to murder this witness. So that's kind of the main theory right now. So we need to make a note of who's actually speaking in this scene that I kind of want to potentially relate to being a suspect. I need better equipment. Let's just do a, I feel like we need to spice this up a little bit. We'll do another colour. Let's just say in this box down here, this is the room when she tells people about the murder that she saw. So we obviously have Ariadne Oliver. This is so hard to write. I'm sorry if my handwriting is not the best right now. There's also a girl called Beatrice, who is there asking questions about it. There is Kathy and Kathy's mother. And then there is Rowena Drake, who hosted the party. She's there too. And she's the one who says, of course you didn't see a murder. Don't say silly things, Joyce. Yeah, the only thing Joyce says about it really is because I didn't know it was a murder when I saw it. It wasn't really till a long time afterwards. I mean, that I began to know that it was a murder. Something that somebody said only about a month or two ago suddenly made me think, oh, that was a murder I saw. How did her memory get jogged again? Like, what was it that jogged her memory? What was she doing a couple of months ago that would have tied to a big clue about the fact that it was a murder that she saw? You know, like, these things are like very interesting right now. Anne, someone called Anne, is asking Mrs. Oliver questions at the time that this gets brought up. Anne is there for the conversation too. And I think that's all of the names that are brought up during this scene. So these are the 6 people right now who I know were there when Joyce mentioned the murder. But somebody could have overheard. You know, it didn't say everyone who was in that particular scene. So maybe as Poirot is investigating and talking to more people, maybe that's when we'll find out that more people overheard. Especially since Poirot says it could be that someone who was there earlier in the day and heard Joyce's accusation, knew about the murder, knew who committed the murder, perhaps was closely involved with that person. It may have been that someone thought he was the only person who knew what his wife had done, or his mother or his daughter or his son, or it might have been a woman who knew what her husband or mother or daughter or son had done, blah, blah, blah. Honestly, the possibilities are endless with it. And I do have a theory, but again, I will mention that when I talk about suspects. I think it's also really important to notice about that on page 63, Poirot says a woman might have been strong enough. So, I mean, this happened before. I think was it the ABC murders or the body in the library or something? There was something about, you know, a woman being strong enough for the murder. So it's brought up again here. So really the murderer could be any gender. But I'm sure we've been burned by that before. 7 chapters in, this is all we really know about Joyce, or at least everything that I thought was important to note. So let's go through our initial suspects. Now it's time for wine. You know, I just thought I would put this on the wall here, because why not? I'm most likely going to end up using it at the same place later anyway. Plus, I don't give a shit about the landlord. So under here is where I want to put the suspects and the clues. So we're kind of stepping up the murder board from the last few episodes. I mean, we'll finally get there. We'll finally get a murder board worthy of a Agatha Christie solve-along. So let's talk suspects. My first initial suspect is Mrs. Drake, Rowena Drake. Why? I'm going to tell you why. So she did host the party, which isn't initially, you know, any kind of red flag. And it's not why I think she's a suspect. I think she's a suspect because going back to the fact that Joyce had actually witnessed a murder, Rowena Drake has a little bit of an interesting love life. She's a widow. Her husband died a year or 2 ago. Okay. He got polio and has been disabled for years. He was a banker originally, I think. He was very keen on games and sport and hated having to give all that up and be an invalid. So obviously I hate a lot of the representation when it comes to disabled characters. I hated it in the ABC Murders as well. Was it the ABC Murders? The Body in the Library. There have been other Agatha Christie books where I just haven't really liked the disabled representation or how disabled people have been talked about. I think it's interesting that it says that her husband died a year or 2 ago. It does mention that he got polio, but it doesn't say that he died from it. So my first instinct was, maybe Rowena Drake like poisoned him or something over time. And that could potentially be what Joyce had seen. Maybe she saw Rowena spike his drink or something like that. I am kind of not 100% convinced by that, but she is a suspect in my eyes. I'm not 100% convinced by it, of course. I don't 100% think that's what happened, but that was just my first instinct. I think Rowena might have killed her husband. And with it saying that he died a year or 2 ago, and Joyce saying that this happened a few years ago, it could line up. So we have Rowena Drake on the board. I was going to say maybe Ariadne Oliver, but I believe she's in more Poirot books or like more Agatha Christie books, so I don't think she could have done it because she's a recurring character, even though she was pissing me off at one point and I was very tempted to put her top of the suspect list. So I thought I would also mention Joyce's siblings. So Anne, she is the older one, she is 16, so she is Joyce's older sister. And then I believe Joyce is the middle child at 13. And then Leopold, who is in the early 11, so he is 10. So I just want to mention these two because they really don't have any emotion to the fact that their sister was murdered or anything. And I mean, for a 10-year-old, that is probably accurate, I guess, for some 10-year-olds who haven't really come across murder before. He talks like an older man, though. When Poirot talks to him, he talks like an older man. He does talk about Joyce being alive and stuff, but he's not even 11 yet. And he's just, like, again, showing no emotion. But Anne as well, who is 16, who I thought would have shown more emotion, she shows nothing. Poirot talks to her, she's studying for her A-levels, And she just says, yes, I was at the party. And Poirot says, you heard your sister say something about having seen a murder. She says, oh yeah, I heard her. I didn't take any notice though. She says, of course it wasn't true. There haven't been any murders here for ages. Which is again why I'm kind of leaning towards Rowena Drake poisoning her husband. Because if it was passed off that he died from polio, then that's not a murder. It wouldn't have classed as a murder on the autopsy report or anything like that. So that's why I'm thinking, that's why I'm like, But I think that's probably a bit too obvious. And yeah, Anne just has no emotion towards the fact that her sister is dead. They always say as well that maybe it was someone who has like mental health issues who did it, which I hate that representation also. But a few people have said, including Rowena Drake, the three people that we've kind of interrogated so far, Rowena, Leopold and Anne, have all said, oh, it was probably someone who broke into the party because, you know, the doors were open and stuff, could have been anyone, but they think it could have been someone from like a mental institute or something who's come in and done it for no reason, you know? It's like, they're really pushing that narrative. I definitely don't think it was just someone random coming in to do it, but the fact that, you know, we have this potential thing and they're all saying that, is a bit of a red flag for me. Yeah, Anne even says, I don't want to be nasty about Joyce because she's dead and it wouldn't be kind, but she really was the most awful liar, you know? I mean, I'm sorry to say things about my sister, but it's quite true. Did you hear that? Oh, Tobu, he's on his little bed on the radiator. Can you see him? Can you see him? Hello, Tobu. And fair enough, like, she might have been alive and stuff, but are you not going to cry? She's just been murdered. You're 16. You've known her all of her life. So I'm going to write Leopold and Anne. They're pretty much all the people we've talked to so far, really, and I'm not convinced by the suspects at all yet. I am leaning more towards Rowena than anything else, but I need to see more, I need to read more. We need to talk to more suspects, get more people on this list, and also that just hasn't been any clue so far, so we've got to get cracking. Okay, I'm starting a little bit concerned that my first suspect is the one. It better not be. Don't get me wrong, I don't want to lose. If it's Mrs. Drake, that's like a slap in the face to me, Slagatha, as a seasoned sleuth now. Because that's maybe just a little bit too easy. So there's part of me that's like, it can't be then, it can't be. But there are things that are so weird about her that I kind of have to take note of. So Poirot goes to Miss Whittaker, who works at the school, and she says something that's so damning that I'm kind of like, well, I feel like we've solved it now. And this is 96 pages in. She says, I saw Mrs. Drake coming out of the lavatory on the first floor landing, and this was while the people were playing Snapdragon. Like, so this is round about when the murder had taken place. And so Mrs. Drake was obviously not there for that game. She was off on the first floor landing, which is near the library. She was looking towards the other end of the hall where there is a door leading into the library. So she's looking down there and she picks up a vase, which was full of water. She walks down the corridor and then she stood there for a moment or two, still not looking at what she was carrying. And suddenly she made a sudden movement. A start, I would describe it as, yes, definitely something has startled her, so much so that she relinquished her hold of the vase and it fell, reversing itself as it did so that the water streamed over her and the vase itself crashed down the hole below where it broke in smithereens on the whole floor. Why? Well, Miss Whittaker theorizes that something startled her and she was looking at the library, so maybe she saw something, but like, why would she go out of a bathroom carrying a vase and stand there for a couple of moments and then suddenly drop it, making sure that the water spilled on herself when the murder weapon was a barrel full of water? And then she comes down, like the direction of her eyes, as I told you, was towards the door of the library. She comes down, she sees Miss Whittaker and, you know, says to her, oh gosh, so clumsy, blah, blah, blah. So I feel like maybe she did that on purpose so that she was wet, but like maybe she was already wet from drowning Joyce. And then smashing this face was like an alibi kind of thing, you know, like, oh, I'm wet because of that. But I'm just like, how weird is that? Because she was just standing there, and Miss Whittaker can't say for sure that she was startled, just that she made a movement that looks like she was startled and pours the water on herself and drops the vase. Like, hello? And out of all the people who were there at the time of Joyce talking about the murder that she witnessed, she's still the only person who is a suspect for me who was there at that time. So she wasn't there for Snapdragon. Okay, the superintendent, Spence, gives Poirot a list of like the murders that had happened, as well as a death that looks kind of suspicious, which was Mrs. Llewellyn Smith. I probably pronounced that wrong. There was also Charlotte Benfield, Janet White, and Leslie Farrier. It looks like a lot of these weren't actually likely that Joyce could have witnessed it. And there's something weird with Mrs. Llewellyn Smith. I'm just going to call her Mrs. Smith. Something weird about her death is that she did just pass away seemingly naturally, but there was like this opera girl who was potentially forging her signature. They might have forged Mrs. Smith's will. She got caught for the forgery too. And it seems like she could have probably passed away from like that whole poison thing that I mentioned before that Mrs. Drake could have done to her husband like 2 years before, which is what I thought maybe Joyce witnessed somehow. But I'm kind of not really believing that anymore, but I'm trying to connect it to this murder. Then there was Charlotte Benfield, was a 16-year-old shop assistant, multiple head injuries. Poirot doesn't think it's her, and I don't think it's her that she saw because, you know, she was bludgeoned to death essentially. How can you not think that was murder? So it has to be something that looks like it wasn't murder, but was. Leslie Farrier was stabbed in the back, not far from the Green Swan pub. But then the last person as well, Janet White, was found strangled on a footpath, a short cut from the schoolhouse to her home. In Janet White, the school is where Joyce goes. So it is more likely that she saw that, and especially if she was strangled, potentially Joyce saw a struggle but probably didn't think it was murder, so that's kind of likely, right? So there might be some connection, which is where I start getting confused, because when I try and find out why, or like the how sometimes, I never get it. I only ever really get the who. A lot of the times it's based on instinct, but yeah, I'm trying to find out or connect the dots, and I'm just not really connecting the dots right now. Like, what's up with the opera girl who was forging Mrs. Smith's stuff? What's with the death of Janet White and being strangled? And, you know, like, if she was strangled, then potentially it was a scorned lover, which would indicate a man, and I don't recall a man being at the preparations for the party when Joyce said she witnessed the murder. There is Reverend Charles, who was the vicar, Simon Lambton, the curate, Leopold, but he couldn't have strangled a teacher. He was 10 now, probably 7 or 6 at the time of the murder. Actually, 2 names do stand out to me, Nicholas and Desmond. And they were mentioned because they were at the party too. Yeah, it's when Superintendent Spence, after the murder, was mentioned about someone being at the party, probably just had the urge to kill her. There were 2 in the right age group at that party. Nicholas Ransom, nice looking lad, 17 or 18, he'd be the right age. So he could have been around about 14, 15 when the teacher got strangled. And then also Desmond, remanded once for a psychiatric report, but I wouldn't say there was much to it. I think around about the same age too. I kind of feel like I should probably mark them as suspects maybe as well, just in case. Maybe something happened between the teacher and them, or one of them. They are the only other males in this party who could have strangled Janet White. But I'm also wondering, like, maybe none of the murders or suspected murders have anything to do with it either, you know? It could just be all a red herring. Again, that doesn't really make a whole lot of sense, because it had to have been because she said she witnessed a murder. Why else would someone kill her? There must be another reason, but nothing else has come up other than her confessing she's witnessed a murder. There is another suspect who I want to bring forward. Dr. Ferguson. He gives me such weird, icky vibes. Joyce was Dr. Ferguson's patient. When he's talking about murder in general and children being murdered, he says, "Mind you, doing it in a child isn't anything to be startled about nowadays. I've been called out to look at too many murdered children in the last 7 to 10 years, far too many." And he's so nonchalant about it, and especially when he talks about Joyce. He pretty much calls her an awful person and not a very nice child. And she's a child, remember. Everyone talks horribly about Joyce. I'm starting to think maybe everyone did it. The way that there's just so much repetition in what people say, it's almost like they've been talking to one another about an alibi or about Joyce. It's like, I mean, yes, maybe she was a compulsive liar and she was, you know, always telling tall tales, but like so many people are saying like the exact same thing, and I don't think it is all of them. I still want to make it an option because Agatha Christie has done that before. I'll not say which story in case you haven't read it yet, but it is like a big famous plot twist of one of her stories. But the thing that also gets me with Dr. Ferguson is he talks to Poirot and he says, "That's what you got to start off with, isn't it? Just someone who was at the party. I was there myself," he said. "Came in late just to see what was doing." It was just so weird the way that he brought it up that he was actually there. So that puts him on the scene. And maybe Joyce mentioned something to him if she was his patient. And he could have been the man who strangled Janet White. I don't know. I don't really know his history, his personal life. It would fit the bill. So I think Dr. Ferguson himself right now is getting up there on my suspect list along with Mrs. Drake. Okay guys, the wheels are turning. They're bloody turning. Right, I haven't read any more or anything. I'm just trying to find something I can stick this paper. Because I wrote this list out I had an idea. Washi tape will do. Back to the murder board. This is not a flat angle, but I don't care. So I've put all of the suspects on the board here. I still don't really have any clues. Like, there's not really been a footprint or anything like that that could point me towards like a clue or anything. So I wrote the list out. That's on page 83 to 84. There is a list of people who were there during the preparations of the Halloween party where someone heard Joyce say, oh, I witnessed a murder. Look who is right here. Miss Lee. Dr. Ferguson's dispenser. So even though Dr. Ferguson wasn't there for the preparations, he did admit that he got to the party later. He said, I was there myself, came in late just to see what was doing. Just to see what was doing? Like, so he didn't say he was invited. He didn't say, oh, I was invited to the party and I was just late. He just said, came in late just to see what was doing. So he heard about the Halloween party and came, right? That's what I'm kind of getting from that line. Well, if Miss Lee, his dispenser, was at the party and overheard, she might have told him, she might have, well, how actually, because this was written in 1969, so unless she telephoned him just randomly to be like, but why would she though? But it's just the connection to Dr. Ferguson being at the preparations. I think a dispenser is somebody who he worked with, like a general practitioner, a GP, I think. But that just stuck out to me. I don't know how she told him, but maybe she told him that Joyce had mentioned she witnessed a murder, and Dr. Ferguson just put two and two together and was like, oh, she probably saw me strangle, what was her name again? Janet White, yes. So he probably thought, oh, she saw me strangle her, potentially. I feel like I'm clutching at straws here, but when I wrote out that list, that's kind of what stuck out to me. But then it doesn't really explain why Mrs. Drake was weird when she dropped the vase. It was almost like she was waiting for something to happen, and it's like maybe she dropped the vase as Dr. Ferguson was killing her, but then why would she make herself purposefully wet with the vase? You know what I mean? Like, why would she do that? So I think maybe Dr. Ferguson drowned Joyce and Mrs. Drake covered up for him. Maybe she's the one who told Dr. Ferguson, because then why else would she cover up him doing it with dropping the vase at that time? Maybe to make sure that nobody could hear Joyce cry out when it was happening, or something. I don't know. I don't get paid enough for this. Okay, so I think maybe my lead suspect right now is Dr. Ferguson, with Mrs. Drake potentially helping him cover it up. I don't know. So much is going on. Too much. I feel like I'm being split in a million different directions. And the thing is, though, I'm a little bit worried that it might be a little bit too straightforward as well, which I know sounds a little bit contradictory of what I'm saying, but I do have like a major red flag for a specific suspect. If it's that person, then it really does fall in line with so many other Agatha Christie books. I'm like, ah! Let's get back to pretty much the story at hand. I do want to quickly mention that we met someone called Michael Garfield. I'm just gonna have to write, read, and talk at the same time. Slagather is a triple threat. He ended up making the quarry garden, and the quarry garden is something that was for Mrs. Smith, who passed away weirdly, and then Olga, who is the one who was being accused of forging the will and is called the Opera Girl. She disappeared right after it as well. So Michael Garfield, Poirot says he made it, I think, for a Mrs. Llewellyn Smith. No longer alive, I believe. There was a Colonel and Mrs. Weston, I believe. Do they own it now? Yes, they got it cheap. It's a big ungainly house, not easy to run, not what most people. She left it in her will to me. And you sold it. I sold the house and not the quarry garden. Oh yes, the quarry garden went with it. So Mrs. Smith apparently left in the will the quarry garden as well as the house. I only thought that was like something worth noting, even though I don't really suspect Michael right now. He hasn't really done anything since this little interrogation with Poirot. He does say that Joyce was not important and she had a rather ugly voice, and he's very blasé about her, but pretty much everyone has been. And he does say that he wasn't at the party anyway, so I mean, do I believe him? I don't have a reason not to believe him. It's made even more clear that Rowena Drake's husband was Mrs. Smith's nephew. And this is where I think we have a motive. And this is what I've been trying to find this entire time. You know, not just the murder of Joyce, but the murder that Joyce had apparently seen and what happened there. So it's getting a little bit more clearer to me that potentially Mrs. Drake offed Mrs. Smith and also her husband for money. So Olga Semenoff, she was pretty much looking after Mrs. Smith And Mrs. Smith did actually leave everything, her fortune, to Olga. And everyone was saying like Olga had forged the will and stuff like that, but we actually find out that she didn't. Mrs. Smith actually did write that will, and she had 2 witnesses. One of them is now in Australia or somewhere, and the other one actually comes to Mrs. Oliver, Ariadne Oliver, there's so many names, to say that she was a witness to Mrs. Smith writing the will. So I feel like it all ties back to this will, and 90% of the Agatha Christie books I've read, money. It's money. It has to be the will. It has to be the money. Olga disappeared after this, after the death of Mrs. Smith, and she apparently just went away. I don't think she did. I think she was murdered, and I think that might have been the murder that Joyce saw. When talking to Mr. Fullerton, Poirot asks, I understand that Mrs. Llewellyn Smith left a large sum of money to the girl, and he replies her money had always been left jointly to her nephew, Hugo Drake, and his wife, who was also his first cousin, and so also niece to Mrs. Llewellyn Smith. If either of them predeceased her, the money went to the survivor. Rowena's husband, the nephew of Mrs. Smith, he dies before Rowena, so then she would get the fortune. 9 times out of 10, the money is the motive. So circling back to Rowena then, another few reasons why I think she fucking did it is, well, one, she's a big racist, so instant jail. And then second, when she's explaining the vase of flowers, she's acting like she doesn't remember, but then she's like, oh wait, hang on, yeah. She explains that it was one of her wedding presents, and she was furious that someone hadn't changed the water in it, and the flowers were apparently dying. So she went into the bathroom, filled it up with water, and then left the bathroom, and then that's when she dropped it. And she is adamant that she never saw anything in the library. I didn't see anyone leave the library. Nobody at all. That's exactly what she says. Poirot, he wondered. The way in which she said it was what aroused the belief in his mind that she was not speaking the truth. So, I mean, there's a huge red flag there as well. And I feel like it's getting a little bit too obvious. I hope it's not this. I do. I hope it's not this. I hope it's a lot more clever than this. But, you know, the fact that she said I didn't see anyone leave the library, nobody at all, again, goes back to me thinking that she staged the whole dropping the vase thing so that she had a reason to say that she was dripping wet, whereas she was probably already dripping wet from dunking the young girl's head in the barrel, removing Dr. Ferguson from this, who hasn't appeared again since, you know, I started, and it's now on page 204, and I've got 40 pages to read in less than 3 hours because that's when the Halloween party is tonight. Hope no one gets murdered. So Dr. Ferguson is kind of slipping down my list of suspects, and I'm wondering if maybe Rowena, like, yeah, she's just killing left, right, and centre. And then she goes on to say, when my husband was killed, he was crossing the road and a car ran over him and knocked him down. So he didn't die from polio, which is what I thought the entire time. They never found the person who was responsible. And apparently it was a grasshopper Mark 7 who ran him over. I'm wondering, because this has happened a few times in Agatha Christie books, it has been a man and a woman working together. And I'm not going to say exactly which books I read that has this recurring motive, because I don't want to spoil those ones for you, but I remember one that involved an affair. So I'm wondering if maybe Rowena was having an affair, maybe with Dr. Ferguson, and maybe the husband found out, she got him killed, and she also disposed of her aunt, Mrs. Smith, because I'm just giving you like all my theories, even though I still have, you know, so much to read. She disposed of her aunt so she can get the money from the will, but she had to also kill off Olga because she was going to get all of the money, but tried to work the angle that she forged it. Then Joyce had seen this unfold. What exactly she saw, I'm not 100% sure, whether it was Olga she saw her kill. Maybe she saw... No, because I was going to say, maybe she saw Rowena or whoever she might be having an affair with. Again, I have nothing to say about this affair, but that's just something that happens in Christie books. Maybe Joyce saw him get run over, but then she would have known that was murder right there and then. So it has to have been potentially Rowena, because again, she was the only person really who heard her say, oh, I witnessed a murder at the preparations for the Halloween party. So maybe Joyce saw her kill either Rowena's aunt, Mrs. Smith, or she saw her kill Olga. Look. And also, yeah, she's just a racist piece of shit. On page 161. Just discussing racist and ableist. Oh man, how am I supposed to solve this case? You don't need to be helped any longer. You've always had the power to solve the mystery. Hi, I'm Sluglinda, and I am Slagatha's cousin from the north. When I tell you I have 50 minutes until the party, and I haven't even set up yet. Also, this is just a sneak peek into my Wizard of Oz vlog that I'm doing next month, so stick around if you want to see that. This is the final theory. I have caught up to where I need to be. I'm on page 246. I just finished chapter 24, and we need to find out who did it. And I have a theory.
I've got a theory that it's a demon.
So some developments. There has been another murder, Leopold Reynolds, and it looks like Rowena, she mentions that she did see him leave the library. You know, when she does that whole performance with the vase thing, I'm still calling bullshit on that one. When Rowena tells Hercule Poirot about the death of Leopold, who was found in a brook, and can we just say as well that this dress does actually fit me quite well. It was very suspicious when she talks about Leopold because, why did I think it was suspicious again? Honestly, I feel like I have no clue what I'm doing anymore. It doesn't make sense that she just saw Leopold come out the library. Why did she have a reaction? She says that the way he looked upset me. Upset you enough to drop this expensive vase and get the water all over yourself like a staged thing? You know what would have actually surprised her is if she did see Leopold, but that was because she realised that he was in the room the entire time that she was murdering Joyce. That is the only reason why she would be shocked enough to drop it, because it doesn't seem like she could see into it and see that was the dead body of Joyce. Because why would she just drop that face in shock just seeing Leopold come out the library? That on its own does not make any sense. I saw the door of the library open rather carefully, and then he came out. At least he didn't come right out. He just stood in the doorway and then pulled the door back quickly and went back inside. Why would she drop the vase if he just came out and went back inside? She would have had to have seen something, and she only reacted because she realised, oh, well damn, there's another witness to a crime I've just committed. And also the fact that Leopold had been very flush of money lately. Somebody must have been paying him to keep silent. It's right there in front of you. It's right there in front of you. She obviously realised that Leopold saw what she did and she was giving him push money and then got him killed. Whether or not she was the one who actually drowned him or if it's an accomplice, who I do think she has an accomplice, then time will tell. I've got like 20 minutes and I've got to set up. And I'm just giving you all of my final predictions now. I don't really have anything else to say about the story. It's getting so confusing, like unnecessarily confusing. And it even said, where is it? God, so Glenda needs to get on the treadmill a bit more. The motive seems somewhat complex, if I may say so. No, said Poirot. Not complex really, but so simple that they are very difficult to say clearly. I'm telling you, it is simple. I think it's very simple. In all of this fluff with people being stabbed years ago and all of this and the forgery of the will, because apparently the will wasn't actually forged. What? You know, I'm just getting so confused. So I'm trying to keep it simple in my head by just focusing on the will. The will is the one thing that I think is the centre of it all and the motive that we need for this murder or series of murders. Who has the most to lose? Who has the most to gain? And that person is Mrs. Rowena Drake. Now I'm trying so hard to connect her to someone else because it has to be someone else. Especially since the part that we left with in chapter 24, Miranda, who is Joyce's best friend, she is being kidnapped by someone. It looks like he is wearing a costume because she laughed when she sees him. She gets into the car. A man with beetling grey eyebrows and a grey beard was sitting in it reading a newspaper. Miranda opened the door and climbed inside. She laughed, "You do look funny." So she obviously knows this person. She knows he is wearing a costume. She isn't scared of him. In fact, she thinks he looks ridiculous. So he must be wearing a disguise. And the reason why Miranda is being kidnapped right now is because she is best friends with Joyce. And Joyce would have told her things. But not just that, but earlier in the story too, Miranda was on for the well. And she even asks Michael outright, where is the well? And he does not want to tell her where this well is. And it's all in front of Poirot. I'm like, why are you hiding? Why don't you want her to find this well? All she wants to do is make a wish. But it seems obvious to me that he knows that something else sinister there. Because at the end of the section that we've read, there has been a body found in the well. And that body belongs to Olga Semenov. Or at least they've said that's who it belongs to. I don't think they've run any forensics. I don't know how they can actually confirm that right now. But they believe it's Olga. So my theory that potentially Joyce saw Olga getting disposed of, and that was the murder that she saw that Rowena is trying to cover up, it just makes a bit sense. It makes a bit sense to me. The one thing I can't really prove or explain too much is an affair. I'm only going off it because, you know, it's kind of been something that's a recurring theme in Agatha Christie books that I've read. So I feel like I shouldn't lend into that because I don't have anything to prove with that. I do know that Michael and Rowena have spoken in the past, and both of them were in the will. Michael did get the quarry house and the gardens in the will. And also what's really weird as well is that both Rowena and Michael are planning on leaving. There is talk that both of them might leave from other people, and Michael is saying, yeah, I might leave. Rowena hasn't mentioned anything about it, but somebody else who's commenting on Rowena's like, yeah, I think she's gonna leave. You know, it's like, okay, these two people are leaving at the same time? Like, why? It has to be about the money. It has to be about the will. There is nobody who will benefit from any of this but Rowena. She probably killed her husband. What was it? In a Grasshopper Mark 7. She probably got Michael to do it. That's probably the car he's in right now with Miranda. And Rowena and Michael together took care of Olga. So when the will from Mrs. Smith came to light, then everything would just go to Rowena, so she would inherit the entire fortune. But also Michael benefited from that will also by getting the house and the gardens. So I'll do a process of elimination now. Elizabeth Whittaker, she has barely done anything for me to warrant her being a suspect. Someone mentioned something about her being odd, but that's not enough to go on. So she is out running. Anne, who is Joyce's and Leopold's sister, she hasn't been in it since we saw her. She does come across as quite cold and emotionless, but I don't think it's her. She has nothing to gain from a will. Also put Olga Semenoff on there as well, because maybe she's not dead. Maybe that isn't her body down the well. Maybe this whole plot and everything was to get the fortune, and who knows, maybe Rowena Drake is in danger. I haven't had too much evidence to say that Olga is alive, so I can't say that she is. So I'm going to say that she is the body in the well, and she was the person who Joyce saw as the murder that she didn't realise was a murder at the time. So I crossed Olga off also. Everyone. I did say maybe everyone did it. I don't think that's true. That was just silly. Desmond and Nicholas, they have only been in it very briefly also, and they were at the preparations, but they did not hear Joyce say that she had seen a murder. So I kind of believe them as well. They have been said to be quite trustworthy. And what do they benefit from this will? Nothing. They don't benefit anything. So even if they did accidentally kill someone in the past, because I thought, oh, maybe they accidentally killed Rowena's husband and then heard Joyce say that she saw a murder, so they decided to kill her to cover their tracks. You know, maybe it was all like this accidental thing, but I genuinely think, hand on heart, the will is the centre of it all. So Desmond and Nicholas are out. You've been evicted, please leave the Big Brother house. So Dr. Ferguson, he was like my chief suspect along with Rowena at the start, but he hasn't been in it since either. There has been nothing, absolutely nothing to indicate that it is Dr. Ferguson, except the weird behaviour. He did say he was at the party in a weird way also, but I can't just go off weird feelings alone, so I'm going to have to rule them out. Another interesting thing about Michael Garfield as well, because now I process of elimination to everyone but Rowena and Michael, is that Michael can draw. Poirot sees him doing these incredible drawings, and you know, this forgery, like there's this whole idea of forgery and stuff. If Michael is such an amazing artist, then could it be possible that maybe he could be good enough to forge a will? Because even Poirot says, wow, I can't even see the lines. And I'm wondering if that has something to do with the will also. Like maybe he traced something, maybe he traced his signature and was able to rub out the lines or something as he was forging it. And so that would make him involved in that. Because I don't think Rowena can do all of this on her own. And a lot of books I've read have been a man and a woman in cahoots. So I think my final theory is that it is Rowena and Michael, and they were after the money. I'm going to be really disappointed if it is that, because literally Rowena was my very first suspect, and the most obvious suspect, but when Poirot also said that, oh, it's quite simple, just everything else is complicated, yeah, I have to agree with that. I think my cats are fighting. Okay, we're going to get ready for the Halloween party now. Fortunately, no one is doing any apple bobbing tonight. My babies, why are you so loud? Okay, here's my entire costume for the Halloween party. And as you can see as well, I have my Halloween candy, snacks, cupcakes, and also I put my wine in one of those little cups too, you know, just to make it feel like a true Halloween party. I managed to make it on time as well. We still have 20 minutes until the party begins, and I'm sure Lexi will hop onto the live beforehand so we can chat a little bit backstage. and get the party started. Come out, wherever you are. I do hope Lexi solved it. I cannot wait to hear what Lexi thinks. You know, we're doing a vlog at the same time, so I will link Lexi's vlog down below to check it out to see if she manages to get it. I'll not reveal it in this video just to keep it spoiler free for hers. Before I go and break the seal, let's see what the Instagram poll says. Every single time I try and solve a Christie crime, I put on my Instagram poll, do you think I'm going to solve it? To let everyone who sees my story vote. 90% of people said yes, even after I failed the last time. And 10% said no. So thank you so much for the vote of confidence. Let's hope that 90% of you are right. Hey everyone! How we doing? What's going on? Is everyone doing good? Perfect. Okay.
What is happening? Can I do that?
I don't know. But I heart you anyway.
What is going on? That's the real mystery of tonight.
Honestly, I'm so excited to hear everyone's theories. Lexi, I'm so excited for yours.
I decided to do a Shirley Temple because it's red. And I was immediately like, it has to be something involving like blood. And they did something with a rum something or other because spelled backwards, it spells murder. It was like a rum something. And I was like, oh, that's rum punch. Apparently backwards. No. That's it. That's it. It spells murder. And I was like, that's so clever.
Red punch spelled backwards.
Sorry. Do you want to see my board for how I've okay. I'm so proud of myself. Look at this. I feel like such a true crime person.
Amazing.
I'm so proud of myself. I don't know if any of it helped, but we'll see, I guess.
You went above and beyond. You went above and beyond, honestly. So we'll see. I have a good feeling that you did.
How long have you been working on the case for, Gavin?
About 9 years, honestly.
It took me, I started yesterday. When did you start?
I started yesterday too. I really did want to try and do it earlier in the week. Yeah. But I couldn't fit it in or anything. So it's been a day. Yeah, I have some snacks. I got like candy.
That's amazing. They're eyeballs.
Yeah, the eyeballs. And I got some cupcakes too. And I've got my red wine in one of those, like, you know what you get at a Halloween party, some cups, some paper cups. Cute. I like it. It tastes good out of this too.
You like actually set up for a party. You did really, really well.
Well, I'm hosting, so I have to. I'm literally Rowena Drake. I'm Rowena Drake. I'm hosting this Halloween party. So everyone stay away from the apple bobbing barrel, okay? Stay away from it. Don't go anywhere near it. So I did do a poll actually. So I would love to know, before anyone shares their theories or anything, how sure are you that you saw Halloween Party? 114 people have voted, which is amazing. So if you haven't voted yet, go for it. But I love that the most voted for option was 0 to 19% sure. So I feel like so many people are doubting themselves right now.
Me too.
And no, don't doubt yourself, honestly. Don't do it. After that, it's 50 to 89%. So I do think there are a lot of people who are quite sure of how they've done. I will probably say that I'm 80% sure that I've got it right, but only if it's obvious. Only if it's obvious.
Okay.
That's my biggest fear.
Yeah, I'm 60%.
Okay, I'm currently on the reading sprint during the live show. We are reading I had to make sure I was on mute there. We are reading the final section of the book to find out who the actual killer or killers are. And let me tell you, Lexi's theory is amazing. Amazing. So really do check out Lexi's vlog if you want to see what that is. But honestly, we're having such fun. So many people's theories in the chat were amazing also. I think we've got this. Anyway, let's crack this case. There's talk of like rituals, ritual worship, ritual sacrifice. I never really mentioned too much about all of that, but also the keyword is beautiful. Michael is very beautiful. The women who died were very beautiful. That's something that was brought up during the live show. Something I didn't think about. So there's that. You die so that beauty should live. Oh, Miranda's just said to him, I thought perhaps you ought to die because what you've done has killed someone else. I was thinking of Joyce. If I hadn't told her about something, she wouldn't have died, which... Are you telling me Miranda was the actual person who saw the murder and then Joyce lied and said she saw the murder? You know what? People said that as well on the live show. I didn't even think of that. Oh my god. Everything is blowing my mind right now. I'm like, oh. Oh man. I told her sacrifices. So did Michael. I still think this is Michael who's kidnapped her. Was that a sacrifice in a way? Why is Miranda asking such weird questions? Is she in on it? Isn't it time yet? Another 5 minutes? Then it will fall directly on the stone? What? They're actually going to do a sacrifice? What? Yeah, we will drink to the past and the present and to beauty. Oh, how lovely, said Miranda. Hang on. Is he giving her alcohol or something? Or poison? Oh, how lovely, said Miranda. She's a child. Get away from her. It tastes of fruit of peaches. Drink it, Miranda, and you will be happier still. I think he's trying to poison her. Drink to beauty, Miranda. Like hell she does, had a voice behind him. Ooh. Nicholas Ransom. What's he doing here? You bloody little idiot. Coming up here with a balmy murderer. You should have known what you were doing. I did in a way. I was going to be a sacrifice. Because you see, it was all my fault. It was because of me that Joyce was killed. Oh, bless her. She feels so much guilt. Okay, so I don't think Miranda's in on it because she is very guilty right now. She feels guilty. Who put her in that well? The same person who brought you here in reference to Olga. It's got to be Michael. It's got to be Michael. So I think Nicholas and Desmond just saved her. Oh, what a pair of good lads. That explains why Joyce mentioned it at the party, because Miranda wasn't at the party. So when she said, I saw a murder, Miranda couldn't step in and say, actually, no, I was the one who saw the murder. So she saw Olga fall. Okay. A man and a woman lifted her up and were carrying her up the path. So it is a man and a woman. Is it Rowena and Michael? And they knew that someone was watching them. So as soon as Joyce said, I saw a murder, 2 people who have bought a Greek island. So all of that was mentioned before. And I think this probably does tie to potentially Rowena and Michael having an affair, and both of them saying that, not even just both of them, but other people saying that they're leaving. Can you say definitely who these people were, Miranda? Of course I can. You saw their faces? Of course. Who were they? Mrs. Drake and Michael. It was not a dramatic denunciation. Yeah, you're telling me, because I feel like that was like the most obvious one. I've still got like another chapter to read. I think a couple of chapters to read. Something else might come up. Something else might come up to change it, but if I'm right, it's another win for Slagatha. Or Slaglinda, I should say. Oh god, Miranda loves Michael, and he told her that sacrifices were necessary. Michael, you were a creep. Go to jail. What made you think it was Rowena? It was simple as soon as I got the vital clue. Literally same. She was my very first suspect. I'm kind of gutted that she turned out to be the person. Water. I wanted someone who was at the party and who was wet, and who shouldn't have been wet. Whoever killed Joyce would necessarily have got wet. She had to get a witness as to how she got wet. Yeah, Mrs. Drake, that's why she did the stupid vase thing. I too knew who the murderer of Joyce was, but that's so obvious though to me. But I assumed that Rowena saw Leopold and realised like, oh crap, he's just seen me murder someone, and that's why she dropped it as well. Like, I went back and forth with that. Like, did she just drop it as a performance? Did she actually see Leopold? I went back and forward with that. They're talking about Mrs. Drake and Michael Garfield, and I think Poirot was one who says, interesting, Lady Macbeth and Narcissus, an unusual combination. And we've literally just been spending so much time talking about Narcissus in Greek mythology and stuff like that, and beauty. And yeah, I love that fact that we've been talking about in that live show, and I never would have thought of that. But the fact that he's literally saying Narcissus out loud, look. Slagatha's sleuths featuring Lexi's Foxenwood patrons. We're pretty smart, you know, we're a pretty smart bunch. Get us together and we'd solve anything. Michael Garfield wanted money. The fortune all went to Rowena Drake, which was the motive. Mrs. Smith discovered that Michael Garfield and Rowena Drake were having an affair, which is what I mentioned, but I didn't have like concrete evidence that was happening. It was like a bit of a gut instinct thing. So that actually makes me feel pretty good about myself. It's the wine. It's the wine. I couldn't solve the ABC murders because I didn't have wine. Whereas I've had wine in this one, and look at this. I got the 2 people who did it. I got kind of the motive. I got the fact that they were having an affair. The wine. It's the wine. Women fell for him easily, but he wanted not the beauty of women, but the exercise of his own creative urge to make beauty. For that, he wanted money. A lot of money. As for love, he only loved himself. He was Narcissus. So it was an affair of convenience. Mrs. Oliver says, I simply can't believe that anyone would do murder just to make a garden on a Greek island. Can't you? Yeah, so he wanted to make a beautiful garden by the end of this. Okay, okay. Do I have to read the rest of this? Lexi's freaking out right now. Olga had to be removed because she knew about the cortical. I think it was Michael who paid money to Leslie, so Leslie the actual forger. People were mentioning in the live show that potentially Michael paid Leslie to forge it to make it look you know, like Olga was forging things, which I think is like such a good theory. It looks like it's right, actually. Michael Garfield refused to take Miranda to the well, which was one of the reasons why I thought Michael was the person. And the Leslie Faria was killed with a knife that was also found in the well. It's so funny as well because he keeps saying, ding dong dell, pussy's in the well. It's just like, it's... Ugh. Okay, so maybe Rowena didn't kill her husband. Maybe he actually was struck down by a hit-and-run driver. Maybe I was wrong about that. Oh, so Leopold asked for money. There were things he wanted to buy, he said. What he guessed on you was uncertain, but he was Joyce's brother, so they probably thought he knew far more than he really did. So, like, maybe Leo didn't actually say the murder happened then? And they just killed him because he asked for money? Wait, Miranda is Michael Garfield's daughter? Poirot's just asked Judith, she is your daughter. Was she also Michael Garfield's daughter? What? Yes, but she doesn't know that? What? Okay, that's a twist. That is a twist. Finally something fucking original. Something that'll surprise me. So I don't think he knew that Miranda is his child either. Oh yeah, I do love the whole like Lady Macbeth, Mrs. Drake, and then Narcissus, Michael Garfield. I love that comparison. I love that angle so much. Well, this was very underwhelming. I mean, I love the twist about the daughter thing because that did shock me, but Miss Christie, you're gonna have to do better than this. So I didn't love the story, but I do feel glad that I got it, but also I feel like I shouldn't have got that. It felt a little bit too easy. Am I getting too good at this? Am I getting too good at this? It's the wine. It's the wine. It feels like a hollow victory. It feels like a... Wow, what am I supposed to do with that? Thanks, Agatha. I did like the story for a lot of it, but it felt a little bit too simple for me, honestly. But yay me for solving it. I think a lot of the people in the Patreon live show as well have solved as well. Lexi's looking very thoughtful right now. I'm going to continue eating my snacks. I don't even know how to end this video. I don't even know what am I supposed to do? To the next. You got there. I think she just read the part about the daughter. I think she just read the part about Michael and Miranda. Well, my Slugosi solved the case. Did yours? Thank you so much for watching this video. I really appreciate it. Don't forget to leave this video a like if you enjoyed it and subscribe if you haven't already. Leave all your comments down below. Let me know what you thought of Halloween Party. Let me know what you thought of the video. Did you solve this? Do you have any recommendations for my next solve along? Let me know everything down below. I'll give a huge thank you to my patrons and my One Piece channel members for supporting my channel. You link to my Patreon or my One Piece channel membership. Then all the links are down in the description box. But yeah, I hope I'll see you in the next video. Bye!